students, we will be talking today about the organs of the immune system. In this class today we will be studying about the primary lymphoid organs. Before that, let's classify the different organs. Now, what do you mean by these lymphoid organs? Lymphoid organs are those organs which participate in the immune system, in destruction of the pathogen, in destruction of the foreign particle. So these organs are divided into two types, that is the primary lymphoid organs and the secondary lymphoid organs. What do you mean by primary lymphoid organs? These are the organs where the cells which participate in the immune response, these cells are born and also they are matured. So they are taking their birth in the primary lymphoid organ, and the maturation of these cells happen here. Secondary lymphoid organs are those where the repair of the cells happen and of the immune cells, and also the process of destruction happens here. So those are called as the secondary lymphoid organs. Now let us see what are the primary lymphoid organs. Primary lymphoid organs are bone marrow, thymus and bursa or fabricus. Secondary lymphoid organs are spleen, lymph node, malt, gall, etc. Now let us see the first primary lymphoid organ, which is the bone marrow. Now this bone marrow is the one which is located exactly in the central part of our bones. Now the bones, why is this bone marrow important? The stem cells, which is the mother of the cells, from where all the other cells arise of the body and of the immune system, basically your hematopoietic stem cells, that is your RBCs, your WBCs, platelets, all these cells arise from the bone marrow. Now the process of the formation of these cells, that is the RBCs, WBCs from the bone marrow, is called as hematopoiesis, which we will be seeing in another video. But all these cells arise from one cell which is called as the stem cell, and these stem cells are taking their birth in the bone marrow. Okay, so if we have to see the structure of the bone marrow, this is how our bones look like. Now the outermost part of the bone, that is the covering, is called as the peristonium. It's the covering of the membrane. Okay, inner to that is your compact bone, or that hard bone, it is called that. Inner to that is your cartilage. Inside that is your spongy bone, and inner to the spongy bone arise your bone marrow. Okay, the bone marrow which gives rise to the stem cells, which ultimately gives rise to your other cells. Now such type of bone marrow is called as your red bone marrow, and the bone marrow which cannot give rise to these stem cells is called as the yellow marrow. Now how does this cells that is produced here, that is the stem cells that is produced here, enter into your other parts of the body or enter into your blood? It is through your blood vessels. You can see here the blood vessels are interconnected, so that acts like your connective cell here, connective tissue here. Now what kind of bone marrow? Is it all types of bone marrow gives rise to your stem cell? No, it's not all types of bone marrow. The bone marrow that is your femur bone, that is your long bones, gives rise to bone marrow. That's still your puberty. After the puberty, the bone marrow, that is the red marrow, slowly starts converting to the yellow marrow, wherein the bone marrow starts becoming inactive. It just starts getting converted to a mass of fat. Now where do these stem cells arise from after the femur, after your puberty? It is your axillary bones. Okay, your axillary bones, that is your rib bone, your thigh bone, your skull bone. These are the bones which gives rise to your stem cell after the puberty. Now bone marrow is a place where your T lymphocytes, your B lymphocytes are also produced, and your B lymphocytes mature and move out of the bone marrow. And B lymphocytes, you know that it ultimately gives rise to your plasma cells. So this is what I was talking to you, the several layers of the marrow, and this is the hip bone, and this is your bone marrow. Moving on to the next primary lymphoid organ is your thymus. Now if we talk about the thymus, now where is the thymus gland? It is located behind the sternum and between your lungs. This is the place where thymus is present. Okay, it's behind the sternum and in between your lungs. It is active only until puberty. Now after puberty, it again gets converted into a fatty mass. Okay, so slowly it starts shrinking after puberty, and it gets converted into a fatty mass. Now if we see the structure of the thymus, now this is how is the structure of the thymus. It is a bilobed structure. It can be, if we take the section of it, it can be divided into various layers or various things. Now what are the various layers? The outermost is the capsule, inner to the capsule is the cortex, and inner to the cortex is your medulla. Okay, now let us see the structure in detail. Now this is the structure of thymus in detail. As I told, it is a bilobed structure. You can see here it is a bilobed structure, and it is about 15 to 20 gram at birth and slowly increases to 40 to 70 gram during puberty, and later on after puberty, after 17 to 20 years of age, it slowly starts shrinking as get converted into a mass. Now this is a structure wherein you can see there is an outermost layer which is a capsule, which acts as a protective layer. Now the inner to the capsule is a cortical layer, and inner to the cortical layer is your medullary layer. Now let us see each one, what is the function of each one, what actually happens here. Thymus is a place wherein T cells are getting matured, wherein the T cells are produced by the bone marrow. They are taking birth, they are born in the bone marrow, and they move to the thymus, wherein in the thymus they are getting matured. Now what actually happens? As I told, the outermost layer is the capsule, and the capsule inner lining has invaginations or foldings, and these invagination is called as a trabeculae. Trabeculae is the one which moves inwards into the cortical area, which divides the cortical region into different parts or different zones. Okay, now in the cortical, through the trabeculae, the T lymphocytes which is produced in the bone marrow enter into the thymus region. Now in the thymus, what are the different cells present? There are many epithelial cells present, as you can see, and also there are many dead cells. There are many thymocytes which is present. Now these thymocytes, you can see these rounded structures, these thymocytes are present in your cortical region, in the cortical region of the thymus. They are produced from the prothymocytes. These are produced from the prothymocytes. Prothymocytes are the ones which is released by the bone marrow, and they reach into the thymus as thymocytes. Now these thymocytes are the one which gets ultimately matured into your T lymphocytes. Many thymocytes, they ultimately come together, and as I told you, there are epithelial cells. These epithelial cells, thymocytes, form a layer or form a shield around about 30 to 40 thymocytes. There is a covering that is formed around 30 to 40 thymocytes, and these epithelial cells which covers the thymocytes or which holds the thymocytes together gives them the conditions for maturation. Okay, so these thymocytes, around 30 to 50 thymocytes, are put together, and all this together are called as the nurse cells. The nurse cells are the ones which give the thymocytes the conditions to mature into T lymphocytes. Now apart from the thymocytes, what are the other cells produced? There are something called as a Hassel's corpuscles. These are the ones which help in the maturation of these thymocytes. Then there are certain dendritic cells. Also there are some macrophages. Macrophages are the ones which are present as a means of protection in case if there are any pathogens that is entering, which, or there are any other cells which is entering, which will be phagocytized by the macrophage cells. So these are the structures. Now once the thymocytes are matured into T lymphocytes, the epithelial wall, the lining, gets dissolved, and the mature T lymphocytes again reaches out through the trabeculae. They move out into the blood and thus go into the respective place for the formation of the other cells. That is, the T lymphocytes ultimately gets converted, or they gets differentiated to T helper cells, T suppressor cells, etc. So as and when their requirements. So this is about the thymus. Now what about the bursa of fabricus? Bursa of fabricus is the place wherein instead of bone marrow, in birds, instead of bone marrow, it is replaced by bursa of fabricus, which gives in birds the bursa of fabricus is present instead of the bone marrow, which gives rise to the blood cells, which gives rise to the stem cells, ultimately gives rise to all the other blood cells, ultimately formation, helps in the formation of the immune cells. So that is just the replacement of bone marrow by bursa of fabricus in the birds. So this is about the primary lymphoid organs. What happens in the secondary lymphoid organs, we will be studying in another video. Thank you, students.